He was just a quiet janitor, sweeping floors and raising his little girl alone. Until one night, someone overheard him humming the song his wife used to sing before she died. They begged him to sing it on Janitor, knowing that the moment he opened his mouth, lives would change forever. The crowd was in tears. But then, a stranger stepped forward. She whispered the words that shattered his world. "That was my sister's song." Suddenly, the past he thought was buried comes roaring back, family secrets, hidden journals, and accusations that threaten to destroy the only piece of his wife he has left. How can one song bring a nation to its knees, tear open old wounds, and yet hold the power to heal? And when love collides with prejudice and pain, will a broken father find the courage to sing again? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The empty auditorium echoed with the soft swish of Eli Turner's broom across the stage. Shadows stretched long across the wooden planks, cast by the few security lights still burning. The familiar scent of lemon cleaner and wood polish filled the air as he worked, his movements steady and practiced after years of maintaining these same floors. In the back row, 10-year-old Lily sat cross-legged, her pencils scattered across 2 seats while she sketched in her well-worn notebook. The scratch of her colored pencils provided a gentle rhythm to accompany her father's work. Eli paused to wipe his brow with his sleeve, his navy custodial uniform dark with the evening's labor. Without thinking, he began to hum softly, a melody that lived in his heart, one that reminded him of warm Sunday mornings and Rebecca's smile. The tune started low, barely a whisper, but grew stronger as memories washed over him. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. The words emerged naturally, mixing with the melody in a raw, soulful voice that carried years of both love and loss. His rich baritone filled the empty space with emotion that made the air itself seem to vibrate. Lily's pencils stopped moving. She looked up from her sketchbook, watching her father with wide eyes. She'd heard him sing this song before, but only in quiet moments at home, never in public, not since Mom died. The song flowed from him now, uninhibited in what he thought was private space. His voice carried the gospel tune with a depth that spoke of hard-won faith, of holding on to hope even when the world grew dark. The melody rose and fell like waves, each note carrying the weight of memory. Through many dangers, toils, and snares. His voice cracked slightly on the words, but the imperfection only added to its authenticity. He kept sweeping as he sang, finding comfort in the familiar motion, unaware that his private moment had gained an audience. In the wings of the stage, several students who had stayed late practicing for their showcase stood frozen, phones forgotten in their hands. They watched in amazement as the man they passed in the halls every day, the quiet janitor who always kept to himself, filled their auditorium with such profound music. When the last note faded away, Eli's humming returned, softer now. The sound of a chair creaking broke the spell. He looked up sharply, suddenly aware of the small group of students emerging from the shadows. "Mr. Turner?" A young woman with bright red hair stepped forward, her eyes shining. That was incredible. Eli's shoulders tensed. He gripped the broom handle tighter, his knuckles whitening. "I'm sorry, I didn't know anyone was still here. I'll finish up quickly so you can continue your practice." "No, please," another student said, moving closer. "We've been trying to find a final act for our charity showcase next week. Something meaningful, something real." He gestured enthusiastically. "What you just sang, that's exactly what we need." Lily scrambled down from her seat, hurrying to stand beside her father. She tugged at his sleeve, excitement clear on her face. "I don't perform," Eli said quietly, already stepping back. "That song. It's private. It was her favorite." His voice roughened on the last word. The students exchanged glances. The redhead stepped forward again, her expression gentle. "It's a charity event for the local children's hospital. We're trying to raise money for their music therapy program." She paused, then added softly, "Music heals, Mr. Turner. What you just sang, that could help people." Eli's hands twisted around the broom handle. I appreciate the offer, but that song, he swallowed hard. It wasn't meant for other ears. It's all I have left of her. Please, Mr. Turner, another student urged. Just think about it. The showcase is next Friday night. Lily looked up at her father, hope bright in her eyes, but she remained silent, understanding the weight of what they were asking. Eli shook his head, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry. I can't. He turned away, resuming his sweeping with mechanical movements, his shoulders hunched against their disappointed looks. The students lingered for a moment longer before slowly filing out, their whispered conversations fading into the hallway. The auditorium fell silent again, broken only by the steady swish of Eli's broom and the quiet shuffle of Lily returning to her seat. The private song that had filled the space moments before seemed to hover in the air like a ghost, a reminder of what was lost and what remained unshared. Eli kept his head down, focusing on the simple back-and-forth motion of his work, trying to push back the memories that threatened to overwhelm him. In the back row, Lily watched her father, her sketchbook forgotten in her lap. The pencil drawing showed a man on stage, singing to the stars, a dream she hadn't known she had until this moment. She stayed quiet, knowing her father needed this silence, but hoping that somehow, the music they'd just witnessed wouldn't remain locked away forever. The old pickup truck groaned as Eli turned the key in the ignition. The engine coughed twice before rumbling to life, its familiar rattle echoing through the nearly empty parking lot. Beside him, Lily clutched her sketchbook to her chest, her eyes fixed on the dashboard's dim lights. Street lamps cast intermittent pools of yellow light across the truck's hood as they pulled away from the community college. The radio remained silent. It had stopped working months ago, but neither of them minded. Their drives were usually quiet anyway, comfortable in the kind of silence that father and daughter had learned to share. Eli's hands gripped the steering wheel, his weathered fingers finding the familiar worn spots in the leather. His mind kept drifting back to the auditorium, to the moment his private song had become public. The memory made his chest tighten. "Daddy?" Lily's voice was soft, almost lost in the truck's engine noise. "Yes, sweetheart." He glanced at her briefly before returning his eyes to the road. Lily fidgeted with the corner of her sketchbook, dog-earing the pages without seeming to notice. "Why won't you sing Mommy's song for the showcase?" The truck slowed at a red light, and Eli released a long breath. In the harsh glow of the traffic signal, his face looked more tired than usual. "It's complicated, Lilybug." "But you sing so beautifully," she persisted, turning in her seat to face him. "And it's for helping sick kids. Mommy always said music was medicine for the soul." The light turned green, and Eli eased the truck forward. A few blocks passed before he found his voice again. "Your mother." He paused, searching for the right words. That song was special to her. She used to sing it in church, at home, even while doing the dishes. It wasn't just music to her, it was her way of speaking to God. The truck rattled over a pothole, and Lily hugged her sketchbook tighter. "I remember," she said quietly. "She used to sing it to me before bed." Eli's throat tightened. Yes, she did. They turned onto their street, lined with modest houses and bare trees waiting for spring. Their small home sat in the middle of the block, its porch light casting a warm glow that barely reached the sidewalk. As Eli parked in the driveway, Lily spoke again. "But why can't other people hear it now?" He turned off the engine but didn't move to get out. The sudden silence felt heavy. "Because, sometimes," he said slowly, "when you lose someone you love, the things they left behind become precious, sacred." He ran a hand over his face. "Every time I sing that song, it's like tearing open an old wound that never quite healed." "Does it hurt to sing it?" Lily's voice was barely a whisper. Yes and no. Eli turned to look at his daughter, seeing so much of Rebecca in her gentle eyes. "It hurts, because it reminds me how much I miss her. But it also feels like she's close again, just for a moment." They sat in silence for another minute before climbing out of the truck. The evening air had grown cooler, and Lily hurried ahead to unlock the front door while Eli collected his work bag and her backpack from the truck bed. Inside, their routine continued as it had for the past 3 years since Rebecca's passing. Eli warmed up leftover casserole while Lily set their small kitchen table. 2 plates, 2 glasses, 2 sets of silverware, the empty third-place setting, long since stored away in a cabinet they rarely opened. They ate quietly. The only sounds the soft clink of forks against plates and the distant hum of their neighbor's air conditioning unit. Lily picked at her food, pushing the green beans around more than eating them. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" Eli asked, watching her with concern. She nodded, then shook her head, then shrugged, a series of contradictions that made her father's heart ache. She stabbed a green bean with her fork. "I miss hearing the song, not just in the truck or when you think I'm sleeping. I miss hearing it the way Mommy used to sing it, like it was a gift she wanted to share." Eli set his fork down, his appetite suddenly gone. The casserole felt heavy in his stomach. After dinner, he helped Lily get ready for bed, making sure she brushed her teeth and changed into her pajamas. As he tucked her in, she reached for his hand, her small fingers wrapping around his calloused ones. "Daddy." Her voice was drowsy but determined. "Yes, Lily, bug?" She squeezed his hand. "Mommy would want people to hear her song." The words hit him like a physical blow. He leaned down and kissed her forehead, unable to respond. By the time he straightened up, her eyes were already closing. Eli walked to his own bedroom in a daze. He lay down fully clothed on top of the covers, staring at the ceiling where shadows from passing cars occasionally danced. Lily's words echoed in his mind, mixing with memories of Rebecca's voice, her laugh, the way she would grab his hand and twirl herself under his arm while singing in their tiny kitchen. The ceiling offered no answers, but sleep remained distant as Lily's words haunted him through the night. Mommy would want people to hear her song. The afternoon sun slanted through the kitchen windows, casting warm rectangles of light across the wooden table where Lily sat with her math homework spread before her. Eli stood at the sink, methodically washing the lunch dishes, his movements automatic after years of routine. The soft melody caught his ear first, gentle, hesitant notes floating through the air. Lily was humming Rebecca's song while solving her multiplication problems, her pencil tapping in rhythm against the paper. The simple tune carried him back to late nights when Rebecca would rock their baby daughter, singing those same notes. His hands stilled in the soapy water. The plate he was washing slipped slightly, clinking against the sink's metal surface. Lily looked up. "Sorry, Daddy, I didn't mean to." "No, sweetie." Eli dried his hands on a dish towel, his throat tight. "Don't apologize. It's nice hearing it." She watched him carefully, her eyes, so much like her mother's, studying his face. "I remember when Mommy used to sing it to me before bed." Eli pulled out the chair across from her and sat down heavily. "You do." Lily nodded, setting down her pencil. "Not super clear, but I remember how it felt. Safe, happy." She traced the edge of her math worksheet with one finger. Like being wrapped in a warm blanket. The memory hit him like a physical thing. Rebecca wrapped in her favorite quilt on the front porch swing, singing to the night sky, her voice carrying across their small yard. The way she'd lean into him, continuing the melody even as she nestled against his shoulder. "Your mother," he started, then had to clear his throat. "She always said music was meant to be shared, that a song kept inside was like a bird in a cage." "Then why won't you share her song, Daddy?" The question hung in the air between them. Eli looked at his daughter. Really looked at her. She wasn't just asking about the song. She was asking about her mother, about memory, about love. "I'm scared," he admitted quietly. "Scared that if I sing it for others, it won't be just ours anymore." Lily reached across the table and placed her small hand over his larger one. "But maybe that's good? Maybe Mommy's song could help other people feel safe and happy too." Eli's chest tightened. Rebecca would have said the same thing. She never could keep joy to herself, always had to spread it around, share it with others who needed it more. "When did you get so wise, little one?" Lily grinned, a glimpse of her usual playfulness returning. Must be all this math homework. Eli chuckled, then grew serious again. You really think I should do it? Sing at the showcase? Yes, Lily said without hesitation. Mommy would want you to. The certainty in her voice settled something in him. He stood up, decision made. Finish your homework. I need to head to the college a little early today. An hour later, Eli walked through the familiar halls of the community college, his work boots echoing against the linoleum floors. He found the student organizers in the music room, clustered around a piano, arguing good-naturedly about the showcase program. Maria, the student who'd first heard him singing, spotted him in the doorway. Mr. Turner! Her face lit up with hope. The other students turned, conversations dying away. Eli fought the urge to retreat, to return to the safety of his mop and broom and silence. He cleared his throat. If the offer still stands, I'd like to sing at the showcase. The room erupted in cheers and excited chatter. Maria rushed forward, already talking about scheduling rehearsal times and sound checks. Eli nodded mechanically as she spoke, his heart pounding. Each word made it more real, more terrifying. This wasn't just about sharing a song, it was about sharing Rebecca, about opening up the private corners of his grief to strangers. Mr. Turner? Maria's voice softened, perhaps noticing his tension. Are you sure about this? He thought of Lily at the kitchen table, of Rebecca on the porch swing, of music meant to fly free. Yes, he said, his voice steadier than he felt. I'm sure. The students beamed at him, their enthusiasm pure and uncomplicated. They couldn't see how his hands trembled slightly or how each breath felt like lifting a weight. They didn't know that with every nod, every detail discussed, he was dismantling the careful walls he'd built around his heart. Welcome to the showcase, Mr. Turner, Maria said warmly, holding out her hand. As Eli shook it, he silently prayed he was doing the right thing. For Lily, for Rebecca, for himself. The students returned to their planning, their voices rising in excitement, while Eli stood quietly at the edge of their joy, already feeling the cost of his decision deep in his bones. But somewhere beneath the fear, a tiny spark of something else flickered to life, something that felt almost like hope. The fluorescent lights hummed in the narrow backstage hallway of the community college auditorium. Eli Turner sat on a metal folding chair, his weathered hands clasped tightly in his lap. His work uniform, freshly pressed but still showing signs of wear, felt suddenly too tight around his neck. Lily perched beside him, her small hand wrapped firmly around his larger one. She wore her best dress, the blue one, with tiny white flowers that they'd found at the thrift store last summer. Her presence anchored him, keeping the rising panic at bay. You okay, Daddy? She whispered, squeezing his hand. Eli managed a weak nod, though his throat felt as dry as sandpaper. Through the curtain, they could hear the current act, a student jazz ensemble, finishing their piece. The applause that followed made his stomach clench. Next up, the student MC announced, we have something special. Mr. Eli Turner, one of our dedicated maintenance staff, will be performing a gospel folk song. Lily tugged at his sleeve. That's you, Daddy. Eli stood on shaky legs. The stage manager, a kind-faced student with a clipboard, gestured for him to move toward the wings. Each step felt heavier than the last. He hadn't performed in front of people since his high school choir days, and even then, he'd been safely surrounded by other voices. Remember what you told me about Mommy? Lily whispered, still holding his hand as they reached the edge of the curtain. How she said music was like opening a window to heaven. The memory hit him like a physical force. Rebecca, sitting at their old piano, her voice pure and strong despite her failing health. That's right, baby, he managed. Then open the window, Daddy. The stage lights felt hot and harsh as Eli stepped out. The audience was a blur of shadowy shapes beyond the bright glare. Someone had placed a single microphone stand center stage. His work boots seemed to echo with each step across the polished floor. A murmur rippled through the crowd, probably wondering what the janitor was doing up there. Eli gripped the microphone stand, his knuckles white. From the wings, he could see Lily giving him a thumbs up. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and thought of Rebecca. The way she'd sing this song while cooking Sunday dinner, how she'd hum it while gardening, her hands deep in the soil. The peaceful smile on her face during those final days in the hospital, when she'd ask him to sing it softly by her bedside. The first notes came out tentatively, barely above a whisper. When morning breaks on mountain high, and darkness fades from earth and sky. His voice gained strength with each word, the melody flowing from some deep well of memory. The auditorium fell completely silent. Through storm and rain, through joy and pain, your love shines steady, just the same. The chorus swelled, and Eli forgot about the audience, forgot about his fears. In that moment, he was singing only for Rebecca, for Lily, for the love that had shaped his life. Hold fast to faith when night grows long. Let hope rise up in prayer and song. Though shadows fall, love conquers all. Till dawn's light brings us home. His voice carried all the years of loss, all the quiet strength it took to keep going, all the love that remained even after goodbye. The raw emotion in his tone made the simple words profound. As the last note faded, Eli opened his eyes. For a heartbeat, the silence was absolute. Then a sob broke out somewhere in the audience. Another followed. Suddenly, the whole auditorium erupted in applause. People were standing, wiping their eyes, reaching for each other's hands. Eli stood frozen, overwhelmed by the response. Lily ran out from the wings and threw her arms around his waist. "That was beautiful, Daddy," she cried, her face shining with pride. In the back of the hall, partially hidden in shadow, a middle-aged woman in an elegant blazer dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Her hands trembled as she whispered words that would change everything. "That was my sister's song." But Eli didn't see her yet. He was holding his daughter close, his own eyes wet with tears, feeling lighter than he had in years. For the first time since Rebecca's passing, sharing their song didn't feel like losing her, it felt like keeping her memory alive. The applause continued to thunder through the auditorium. Student organizers were crying and hugging each other in the wings. Even the stage manager had set aside her clipboard to wipe her eyes. The simple maintenance man who usually blended into the background had transformed the entire room with nothing but his voice and his heart. Lily beamed up at him. "See, Daddy, Mommy's song needed to be shared." Eli kissed the top of her head, too moved to speak. Together they took one more bow before stepping off the stage, unaware that their lives were about to change in ways they could never have imagined. The applause still echoed through the auditorium as Eli made his way down the stage steps, his legs shaky. Lily bounded ahead of him, practically skipping with excitement. His heart was still racing from the performance, and all he wanted was to slip quietly out the back door and head home. "Mr. Turner!" Several students rushed forward to congratulate him, their faces bright with genuine appreciation. Eli nodded politely, managing small smiles as he gently worked his way through the crowd. His fingers fidgeted with his collar, loosening it slightly. "That was amazing, Mr. Turner. We had no idea you could sing like that. Will you perform at our next showcase too?" Before he could respond to any of their questions, a woman's voice cut through the chatter. "Excuse me, Eli?" He turned to find a well-dressed woman in her mid-40s standing a few feet away. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she wore an expensive-looking blazer. But it was her eyes that made him freeze. They were exactly like Rebecca's. "I'm Sarah," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Sarah Bennett. I was Rebecca's sister." The words hit Eli like a physical blow. He stared at her, unable to process what she'd just said. In 8 years of marriage, Rebecca had never once mentioned having a sister. Lily looked between them, her young face scrunched in confusion. "Mommy had a sister?" Sarah's eyes welled with tears as she looked at Lily. "Yes, sweetheart, though I haven't been a very good one." She turned back to Eli. "Is there somewhere we could talk, please?" Eli nodded mutely, still stunned. He gestured toward the empty classroom, adjacent to the auditorium. "Lily, honey, wait here with Miss Rodriguez for a minute?" The student organizer nodded, taking Lily's hand. Inside the classroom, the fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the empty desks. Sarah stood by the teacher's desk, her hands clasped tightly together. "That song," she began, her voice thick with emotion. "Rebecca wrote it during her freshman year of college. She used to sing it in the church choir." She paused, brushing away a tear. "I never thought I'd hear it again." Eli leaned against one of the student desks, trying to steady himself. "Rebecca never told me she had a sister. Never mentioned any family at all, except to say they weren't in her life anymore." Sarah's face crumpled with guilt. "Because we weren't. Our parents." She took a deep breath. "When Rebecca told them about you, about your relationship, they gave her an ultimatum. Either end things with you, or be cut off from the family completely." The weight of understanding settled heavily on Eli's shoulders. He'd always known there was more to the story of why Rebecca had no contact with her family, but she'd always changed the subject when he asked. They couldn't accept that she'd fallen in love with someone. Sarah struggled with the words. Someone they considered beneath our social status. They were cruel and narrow-minded, and I was a coward. I should have stood up for her, should have supported her choice. Instead, I stayed silent while they disowned her. Eli's throat tightened. "She never let on how much it hurt her. Never blamed anyone." "That was Rebecca," Sarah said softly. "She always chose love over bitterness." She stepped closer, her eyes pleading. "The way you sang that song tonight, you captured every bit of her spirit, her hope, her faith. It was like hearing her voice again." Sarah reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. "I'm a music producer. I have a small studio in the city." She held the card out to Eli. "That song deserves to be heard. Rebecca's legacy deserves to be shared with the world." Eli stared at the card but didn't take it. His hands had started trembling again. "I'm just a janitor, ma'am. I've never recorded anything in my life." "But you have her song in your heart," Sarah insisted. "You understand what it means, what it stands for. Please, let me help you share it. Let me do this one thing for my sister, even if it's too late to do anything else." The door creaked open, and Lily poked her head in. "Daddy, are you okay?" Eli straightened up, trying to compose himself for his daughter's sake. Sarah quickly wiped her eyes and smiled at Lily. "Your daddy sang beautifully tonight," she said. "Just like your mommy used to." Lily's eyes widened. "You heard mommy sing?" Sarah nodded, her smile bittersweet. "Many times. She used to sing in our church choir every Sunday." Eli watched as his daughter's face lit up with this new connection to her mother. He felt overwhelmed by Sarah's appearance, by the weight of Rebecca's hidden past, by the idea of recording the song that had been their private comfort for so long. Sarah placed her business card on the desk beside him. "Just think about it, please. The world needs more love stories like yours and Rebecca's. More reminders that love can bridge any divide." Eli picked up the card, running his thumb over the embossed letters. His heart felt too full, torn between protecting the precious privacy of his memories with Rebecca and honoring her legacy in a way he'd never imagined possible. He cleared his throat. "I'll think about it." Sarah nodded, understanding in her eyes. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Rebecca chose well," she said softly. "I'm sorry it took me this long to see that." The morning sunlight streamed through the worn kitchen curtains, casting a warm glow on the scratched wooden table where Eli and Lily sat eating breakfast. Lily hadn't touched her cereal, too busy firing questions at her father about their unexpected visitor from the night before. "Did Mom really never tell you about Aunt Sarah?" Lily asked, her spoon hovering forgotten above her bowl. "Not even once?" Eli stirred his coffee slowly, buying time to find the right words. "Your mom didn't talk much about her family, sweetheart. It made her sad." "But why?" Aunt Sarah seemed nice. Lily's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "She has Mom's smile, did you see?" Eli's hand tightened around his coffee mug. The resemblance had struck him too, the same gentle curve of the lips, the same warmth in the eyes. It had caught him off guard, like seeing a ghost. "Sometimes families get complicated," he said carefully. Your mom's parents, your grandparents, they didn't approve of me marrying your mom. Because you're different colors?" Lily asked with the directness only a child could manage. Eli nodded slowly. "That was part of it. They wanted your mom to marry someone more like them, someone with money, someone from their social circle." "That's stupid," Lily declared, finally spooning up some cereal. "Life isn't always fair, baby girl." Eli reached across to squeeze her hand. "But your mom chose love over everything else. She chose us." "So, Aunt Sarah did too? By coming to find us?" Eli frowned slightly. "I'm not sure yet. We need to be careful, Lily. Sometimes people have different reasons for coming back into your life." The rest of the morning passed in their usual routine, getting Lily ready for school, dropping her off, heading to work. But Eli's mind kept wandering back to Sarah's appearance, to the way she'd looked at him with Rebecca's eyes. When evening came, the doorbell rang just as Eli was finishing washing the dinner dishes. Lily sprinted to answer it before he could stop her. "Aunt Sarah!" Her excited voice carried through their small house. Eli dried his hands slowly on a dish towel, steeling himself before walking to the front door. Sarah stood in the doorway, clutching a worn photo album to her chest. She looked different in casual clothes, more approachable, less like the polished music producer from the night before. "I hope it's okay that I came," she said softly. "I brought something I thought you both might like to see." Eli gestured for her to come in, watching as Lily practically bounced with excitement. Their living room was modest, mismatched furniture, family photos on the walls, Lily's artwork displayed proudly on the refrigerator, visible through the kitchen doorway. Sarah settled on the couch, and Lily immediately tucked herself next to her. Eli chose the armchair across from them, maintaining a careful distance. "These are pictures from when Rebecca and I were growing up," Sarah explained, opening the album. The first photo showed two young girls in matching summer dresses, arms wrapped around each other, gap-toothed grins on their faces. "That's Mom?" Lily gasped, touching the photo reverently. "That's her at 12 years old," Sarah confirmed. "We used to put on shows in the backyard. She always had the most beautiful voice." Page after page revealed moments from Rebecca's youth, school plays, family vacations, birthday parties. Eli found himself leaning forward despite his reservations, drinking in these glimpses of his wife's early life that he'd never known. "Oh, this one." Sarah's voice caught as she turned to a photo of teenage Rebecca sitting at a piano, head thrown back in laughter. "This was right before she wrote that song, the one you sang last night." Eli's chest tightened. "She wrote it that young?" Sarah nodded. "She was 16. Our parents had just forbidden her from dating a boy they didn't approve of. Instead of getting angry, she channeled it into music. She always said love was stronger than any barrier people tried to put up." Lily traced her mother's face in the photo. "She looks so happy." "She was happiest when she was singing," Sarah said softly. "Until she met your father, then she was happiest with him." Eli looked up sharply, meeting Sarah's gaze. There was no judgment there, only a deep sadness. "I should have stood up for her," Sarah whispered. "When our parents cut her off, I should have." "You're here now," Lily said simply, patting Sarah's hand. Sarah wiped her eyes quickly. "Yes, I am. And I'd like to be part of your lives if you'll let me. No pressure, no rushing, just family, getting to know family." Eli studied her face, searching for any hint of deception. But all he saw was Rebecca's sister, carrying the same weight of loss he'd been bearing alone for so long. "We could meet for coffee," he found himself saying. "Talk more about Rebecca, about the song." Sarah's smile was tentative, but genuine. "I'd like that very much." Lily hugged the photo album close, looking between her father and newly discovered aunt with hope shining in her eyes. Eli felt something shift in his chest, not quite trust, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. "Can we keep looking at the pictures?" Lily asked eagerly. Sarah glanced at Eli for permission. He nodded, settling back in his chair as Sarah turned another page, revealing more pieces of Rebecca's past, each photo a window into the life she'd lived before him. before the pain of separation from her family. As Sarah's voice filled their living room with stories of Rebecca's childhood, Eli watched his daughter's face light up with each new detail about her mother. Maybe, he thought, this unexpected connection to Rebecca's past could be a gift rather than a threat. But he would move forward carefully, protecting Lily's heart as well as his own. The recording studio. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows as Eli pulled into the small strip mall parking lot. Sarah's recording studio occupied a modest storefront between a dry cleaner and a sandwich shop. The sign above read, "Bennett Sound Productions," in simple blue letters. Eli sat in his truck for a moment, drumming his fingers on the steering wheel. The janitor's uniform he still wore after his shift felt suddenly out of place. He smoothed down the wrinkled fabric, trying to make himself more presentable. Sarah met him at the door with a warm smile. "I'm so glad you came," she said, ushering him inside. The studio's reception area was cozy, with worn leather chairs and framed records on the walls. Photos of local musicians and church choirs dotted the spaces between them. "It's not much," Sarah said, following his gaze around the room. "But it's home. Come on back. I want to show you something." She led him through a door into the actual recording space. A small sound booth stood in one corner, its glass window reflecting the afternoon light. Microphones hung from stands like strange metal flowers. The mixing board dominated the room, its many knobs and sliders intimidating to Eli's untrained eyes. "This is where the magic happens," Sarah said, settling into her chair behind the board, "where voices find their wings." Eli shifted uncomfortably. "I appreciate the invitation, Sarah, but I'm not sure why I'm here. I'm just a janitor. I clean floors, fix broken things. This isn't my world." Sarah's expression softened. "That's not what I heard last night. What I heard was pure soul. The kind that can't be taught. The kind Rebecca had." At the mention of his wife's name, Eli's shoulders tensed. "The song was hers," he said quietly. "No," Sarah corrected gently. "The song was both of yours. She wrote it about your love, didn't she?" Eli nodded slowly, remembering the day Rebecca had first sung it to him. They'd been sitting on their tiny apartment's fire escape, watching the sunset. She'd been holding her guitar, picking out the melody as it came to her. Sarah leaned forward in her chair. "Music has power, Eli. It can bridge gaps, heal old wounds. Your voice, singing that song, it could touch so many people who are hurting, who feel alone, like their love isn't accepted." "I don't know," Eli said, shoving his hands in his pockets. "Singing in front of a few hundred people was one thing, but recording? That's different." "Why? Because you're a janitor?" Sarah's voice took on an edge. "Rebecca didn't care about titles or status. She saw your heart. That's what matters in music, too." Eli walked over to the sound booth, placing his hand on the glass. His reflection looked back at him, tired eyes, graying temples, worry lines etched deep. "I never wanted attention. I just wanted to love your sister, raise our daughter, live a quiet life." "And how's that working out?" Sarah asked softly. "The quiet part?" Eli turned to face her. "What do you mean?" "I saw you last night, Eli. When you sang, something came alive in you. Something that's been sleeping since Rebecca died. Don't tell me you didn't feel it too." He had felt it, like a door opening in his chest, letting light in for the first time in years, but admitting that felt dangerous somehow. Sarah stood and walked to a cabinet in the corner. She pulled out something wrapped in faded blue cloth. "I brought this from home this morning. I've been keeping it safe all these years." She unwrapped the bundle carefully, revealing a worn leather notebook. The pages were yellowed with age, some corners dog-eared. Eli recognized it immediately. Rebecca's songwriting journal. "She left it with me," Sarah explained. "The last time we met in secret, about a month before she got sick. She knew our parents might try to erase her choices after she was gone. She wanted to make sure her words survived." Sarah held out the notebook. Eli took it with trembling hands, cradling it like something precious and fragile. The leather was soft from years of use, worn smooth in places where Rebecca's hands had held it. "Open it," Sarah encouraged. Eli carefully lifted the cover. Rebecca's familiar handwriting filled the pages: lyrics, chord progressions, scattered thoughts and dreams. His eyes caught on lines he recognized from their song, written in her flowing script. "Love sees no colors, only light." The memories hit him like a physical force. Rebecca bent over this very notebook at their kitchen table, humming quietly to herself, her face lighting up when she figured out the perfect line. The way she'd read him new verses, watching anxiously for his reaction. His fingers traced the words gently, feeling the slight indentations where her pen had pressed into the paper. It was like touching a piece of her soul. "She wanted the world to hear her truth," Sarah said quietly. "Your truth. Both of you were so brave, loving each other despite what everyone said. That courage, it needs to be shared, Eli. It could give others hope." Eli looked up from the notebook, his vision slightly blurred. "I don't know if I'm strong enough," he admitted, "to put myself out there like that." "You already are," Sarah replied. "You just need to believe it." She gestured around the studio. "We could start small, just record the song, see how it feels. No pressure, no expectations, just you, and the music, and Rebecca's words." Eli looked down at the notebook again, at the evidence of his wife's dreams held in his hands. Something stirred in his chest, not quite hope, but maybe the beginning of it. A tiny spark of possibility. "Think about it," Sarah said gently. "That's all I'm asking." The small church gathering. The wooden pews of Grace Community Church creaked softly as people shifted in their seats. Sunday afternoon light filtered through stained glass windows, painting rainbow patterns across the worn carpet. Eli Turner stood at the edge of the small stage, his hands deep in his pockets, fighting the urge to flee. Sarah Bennett sat at the piano, her fingers hovering over the keys. She nodded encouragingly at Eli, just as she had during their practice sessions over the past week. In the front row, 10-year-old Lily beamed up at her father, clutching her sketchbook tight against her chest. "Friends," Pastor Mike announced to the 40 or so gathered church members, "today we have a special guest. Mr. Eli Turner will share a song that means a great deal to his family." Eli stepped up to the microphone, his work-worn hands gripping it like a lifeline. The familiar opening notes from Sarah's piano filled the small sanctuary. He closed his eyes, and for a moment, he was back in his kitchen 7 years ago, Rebecca spinning as she sang, her voice clear as morning light. His voice started soft, almost a whisper. "When morning breaks and shadows flee, I'll find you there waiting for me." The melody grew stronger with each word, carrying years of love and loss in its gentle rise and fall. Mrs. Rodriguez, who always brought Lily cookies after school, dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Mr. Chen, the hardware store owner who had helped Eli fix countless broken things around their small house, removed his glasses to wipe them clean. "Through storm and rain, through joy and pain, our love will be my guiding light." Eli's voice cracked slightly on the word love, but he kept going, just as Rebecca had taught him. The congregation leaned forward, caught in the raw emotion of his performance. Sarah's piano accompaniment wove perfectly with his voice, supporting but never overshadowing. She watched him with glistening eyes, seeing her sister's spirit alive in the song they had shared. In the front row, Lily mouthed the words along with her father. She had heard him practice in their living room each evening, his voice growing more confident with each try. Now she watched, as the same people who had known them for years discovered this hidden gift her father had kept quiet for so long. As the final notes faded, silence filled the church. Then Mrs. Rodriguez sniffled loudly, and someone in the back began to clap. Soon the whole congregation was on their feet, some wiping tears, others smiling through them. Pastor Mike stepped forward, placing a hand on Eli's shoulder. "Thank you, brother. That was truly a blessing." People crowded around afterward, sharing stories of their own losses and hopes. Mrs. Rodriguez hugged Eli tight, whispering, "Your Rebecca would be so proud." Mr. Chen insisted on shaking his hand 3 times. Lily bounced between the church members, accepting hugs and compliments about her father's singing. "That's Mommy's song," she told everyone proudly. "Daddy and Aunt Sarah helped make it even more beautiful." As the crowd thinned, Sarah pulled Eli aside to the empty church office. Her professional demeanor from the recording studio had slipped, revealing worry in the tight lines around her mouth. "Eli, that was beautiful," she started, twisting her silver bracelet. "But I need to warn you about something." Eli leaned against the old desk, his post-performance high fading at her tone. "What is it?" "My parents." Sarah paused, choosing her words carefully. "They still have connections in the local music scene. If this song starts getting attention, and it will, Eli, it's that powerful, they're going to hear about it." "And?" Eli's voice was quiet. "They never forgave Rebecca for marrying you. They blamed you for taking her away from them. Sarah's voice caught. "They'll never forgive you, Eli. They'll fight you sharing her song." Eli's gaze drifted through the office window to where Lily chatted with Pastor Mike, her face animated as she lightly explained all about her new Aunt Sarah and the music they were making. His daughter's joy collided with the weight of Sarah's warning, and he felt the familiar tightness in his chest, the one that came whenever he had to choose between protecting Lily and moving forward. "I need to know," Sarah continued, "if you're ready for that storm, because once people really start hearing this song, my parents won't stay quiet." Eli watched as Lily turned toward him, waving excitedly through the window, her smile as bright as her mother's had been. The sound of Rebecca's laughter echoed in his memory, along with her words, "Some songs are meant to be shared, my love." He turned back to Sarah, the weight of the choice heavy in the air between them. The wooden pews of Grace Community Church creaked softly as people shifted in their seats. Sunday afternoon light filtered through stained glass windows, painting rainbow patterns across the worn carpet. Eli Turner stood at the edge of the small stage, his hands deep in his pockets, fighting the urge to flee. Sarah sat at the piano, her fingers hovering over the keys. She nodded encouragingly at Eli, just as she had during their practice sessions. In the front row, Lily beamed up at her father, clutching her sketchbook tight against her chest. "Friends," Pastor Mike announced, "today we have something special. Mr. Eli Turner has agreed to share a song with us." Eli stepped forward, his work-worn hands gripping the microphone stand. The familiar tune began to play, and his rich, untrained voice filled the sanctuary. The song spoke of love that transcends loss, of faith that carries through darkness. By the third verse, several elderly women were dabbing their eyes with handkerchiefs. When the last note faded, silence hung in the air. Then, from the back, someone started clapping. The applause spread like a wave, and soon the whole congregation was on their feet. After the service, people lined up to thank him. An elderly man in a Vietnam veteran's cap gripped Eli's hand. "Son, my wife passed last year. Your song. It's like you were singing my heart." That evening, Sarah received a call from the local Veterans Hall. They wanted Eli to sing at their monthly gathering. Word was spreading. The Veterans Hall was different from the church, fluorescent lights and linoleum floors instead of stained glass and carpet, but the response was the same. Eli sang for men and women who had known loss, who carried grief like a familiar weight. His voice, raw with his own pain, reached them in ways polished performers couldn't. A retired Marine colonel approached afterward, his eyes misty. "Turner, we need you at the VA hospital next week. These boys, they could use some hope." And so it went. Each performance led to another invitation. The VA hospital became a regular stop. Eli would arrive after his shift at the college, still in his janitor's uniform, and sing in the recreation room. Patients in wheelchairs would gather, some with distant eyes finding focus as the music filled the space. Lily came to every performance she could. Homework spread across her lap while she waited for her father to sing. She watched as tough veterans wiped their eyes, as grieving widows found comfort in the melody. Sometimes she'd sketch the faces in the audience, capturing their transformed expressions as her father's voice touched their hearts. One rainy Tuesday, Eli sang at a retirement home. An elderly woman in a floral dress waited until the crowd dispersed. "Young man," she said, her voice quavering, "I was a music teacher for 40 years. You have a gift. Not just the voice, the heart behind it." Sarah helped arrange the performances around Eli's work schedule, careful not to overwhelm him. She watched her brother-in-law's transformation with quiet satisfaction. The man who had been drowning in silence was finding his voice, not just in song, but in life. Between shows, Eli still pushed his mop down the college hallways. Students who had seen him perform would stop to chat now, no longer looking past him. But he kept his head down, focused on his work, unchanged by the growing attention. Then came the newspaper. A local reporter had attended one of the VA hospital performances. The story appeared in the Sunday edition of the Pine Valley Gazette. "Janitor with the voice of hope. Local man's song touches hearts." There was a photo of Eli in his blue work shirt. Microphone in hand, his eyes closed in song. Lily burst into the kitchen that morning, paper clutched to her chest. "Daddy, you're famous!" Eli stared at his own face in the newspaper, at words like touching and inspirational next to his name. The man in the photo looked different from the one he saw in the mirror, more dignified, more purposeful. His hands trembled slightly as he folded the paper and set it aside. "Just a small story, sweetheart," he said. But Lily was already cutting out the article to add to her growing collection of Daddy's singing adventures, as she called them. Sarah arrived minutes later, 3 more copies of the paper in her arms. "Eli, this is wonderful. People need to hear your story, to know where the song came from." Eli turned away from the papers, busying himself with washing breakfast dishes. "I'm no different from anyone else who's lost someone," he said quietly. I just sing about it." But the article was already making rounds. His phone buzzed with messages from church members and veterans who had seen it. The college president's secretary stopped him in the hallway to offer congratulations. Even the students who had first discovered him singing in the empty auditorium waved the paper excitedly when they saw him. Eli kept the newspaper folded in his jacket pocket all day, occasionally touching it as if to make sure it was real. When his shift ended, he sat alone in the auditorium where it all began. He unfolded the paper one more time, studying the photo. "Rebecca," he whispered to the empty room, "I hope you'd be proud." The silence that answered felt, for once, like a gentle embrace rather than an accusation. At home that evening, he found Lily had framed the article and hung it in their small living room. She wrapped her arms around his waist. "See, Daddy? Now everyone knows what I always knew. You have magic in your voice." Eli hugged her back, his heart full of gratitude and wonder at how his private grief had somehow transformed into something that helped others carry their own. The framed article caught the last rays of sunset, and for a moment his face in the photo seemed to glow with an inner light that matched the hope he'd been giving others. The streetlights flickered on as Eli's pickup truck rumbled down their quiet neighborhood street. His fingers tapped the steering wheel, still feeling the lingering energy from tonight's performance at the senior center. Beside him, Lily hummed softly, her small head bobbing to the remembered melody. "You hit that high note perfect tonight, Daddy," she said, beaming at him. Eli smiled, though his eyes stayed fixed on the road. "Don't know about perfect, sweetheart. Just sang it the way it felt right." As they turned onto their street, Lily sat up straight. "Daddy, look!" She pressed her face against the window. A small crowd had gathered on their modest front porch. Mrs. Rodriguez from next door, the Johnson family from across the street, old Mr. Blanken www.com, Peterson with his cane, and several other familiar faces from the neighborhood. Some sat in lawn chairs they'd brought over, while others stood in small clusters, talking quietly in the growing dusk. Eli's hands tightened on the steering wheel. What in the world? He parked in the driveway, and before he could stop her, Lily had bounced out of the truck. "Hi, everyone," she called, waving enthusiastically. Mrs. Rodriguez hurried forward, her gray hair gleaming in the porch light. "We saw the article in the paper, Eli," she said, holding up the Sunday edition. "We've lived next door to you for 5 years, and we never knew you could sing like that." Mr. Peterson thumped his cane on the porch boards. Been watching you drive that little girl to school every morning, keeping to yourself. Now we find out you're some kind of singing angel?" Eli shuffled his feet, uncomfortable with the attention. "I'm no angel, Mr. Peterson, just sharing a song that means something to me." "Would you sing for us?" asked Jenny Johnson, her 2 young children peeking out from behind her legs. "Please, we brought cookies." She held up a plate of chocolate chip cookies still warm from the oven. Lily tugged at her father's sleeve. "Please, Daddy, it's such a nice night for singing." The evening air was indeed perfect, cool and clear, with stars beginning to twinkle overhead. A gentle breeze rustled through the maple trees that lined their street, carrying the sweet scent of late summer flowers. Eli looked at the hopeful faces of his neighbors, people who had only ever known him as the quiet widower who kept his yard neat and waved politely in passing. Something in their expressions, a mixture of curiosity and genuine warmth, made his usual reluctance soften. "Well," he began, and Lily bounced with excitement, knowing that tone in his voice. "I'll get your guitar," she exclaimed, already running for the house with the spare key. Mrs. Rodriguez and Jenny quickly arranged the lawn chairs in a semicircle on the grass. Other neighbors, hearing the commotion, drifted over from their homes. Someone brought out a pitcher of lemonade and paper cups. Mr. Peterson settled into the most comfortable chair, right in the center. Lily returned with Eli's old guitar, the one he'd kept tucked away in the closet for years, until Sarah had convinced him to start playing again. The wood was worn smooth from years of use, and the strap still bore Rebecca's name written in faded marker. Eli sat on the porch steps, adjusting the strings with careful fingers. The small crowd grew quiet, waiting. Above them, the first stars of evening pierced the darkening sky like distant diamonds. He began to play, the familiar chords of Rebecca's song flowing naturally from his fingers. His voice, when it came, was rich and clear in the night air. Not polished like a professional's, but genuine and full of feeling. The song spoke of love that endures beyond goodbye, of hope that shines even in darkness. Mrs. Rodriguez reached for her handkerchief by the second verse. The Johnson children stopped fidgeting and sat still, eyes wide. Even old Mr. Peterson leaned forward in his chair, forgetting to grip his cane. Lily sat on the step beside her father, her face glowing with pride as she watched their neighbors experience what she'd always known, the magic in her father's voice, the way it could make people feel less alone. When the last note faded into the evening air, there was a moment of perfect silence. Then Mrs. Rodriguez began to clap, and others joined in, their applause echoing down the quiet street. "My Harold's been gone 3 years," Mrs. Rodriguez said softly, wiping her eyes. "That song! It's like you know exactly how it feels." Others shared their stories too, of lost spouses, parents, children. The cookies were passed around and lemonade poured. What had started as an impromptu concert became something more, a gathering of neighbors becoming friends, sharing memories and comfort under the stars. Eli sang a few more songs, ones he'd learned for his performances at the VA and church. Between songs, he listened to their stories, nodding in understanding. For the first time, he felt truly part of this community that had been around him all along. As the evening grew later, parents gathered sleepy children, and neighbors reluctantly headed home. Mrs. Rodriguez hugged both Eli and Lily before leaving. "You've given us such a gift tonight," she said. "Don't be such a stranger anymore, okay?" After helping clean up the cups and chairs, Eli led a yawning Lily inside. He went through their familiar bedtime routine, teeth brushing, pajamas, a glass of water by the bed. As he tucked the blanket around her, Lily looked up at him with serious eyes. "Daddy," she whispered, "you're giving people hope." Eli paused, something warm expanding in his chest. Looking at his daughter's face in the soft glow of her nightlight, he finally allowed himself a smile of quiet pride. He had spent so long believing he had nothing to offer, but tonight he had seen the truth in the faces of his neighbors, heard it in their stories, felt it in the way they had come together under the stars. The afternoon sun filtered through the dusty windows of the community college hallway as Eli pushed his cleaning cart past rows of empty classrooms. The squeak of his wheels echoed against the linoleum floors, a familiar sound that usually brought him comfort. Today, though, his movements were mechanical, his mind elsewhere, still processing the growing attention his singing had attracted. He paused to wipe down a water fountain, his reflection distorted in its steel surface. The man looking back at him was the same as always. Weathered work uniform, graying at the temples, eyes carrying the quiet weight of loss. Nothing special. Just a janitor doing his job. The sharp click of heels against tile broke his reverie. Sarah Bennett rounded the corner at full speed, her usually composed demeanor replaced by barely contained excitement. Her designer blazer was slightly askew, and she clutched a tablet to her chest like it held winning lottery numbers. "Eli," she called out, slightly out of breath. "I've been looking everywhere for you." He straightened up, self-consciously adjusting his uniform. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" She thrust the tablet toward him, her hands trembling slightly. "Look at this email, just look." Eli squinted at the screen, reading slowly. His eyes widened as he absorbed the words. National Veterans Memorial Service. Broadcast live. Featured performer? He shook his head in disbelief. There must be some mistake. No mistake, Sarah insisted, her eyes shining. They saw the newspaper article, then found the videos people posted from your church performances. They want you, Eli. They want Rebecca's song. Eli's hand tightened on his mop handle. "I can't," he said quietly. I'm not that kind of person. I'm just—" "If you say just a janitor one more time," Sarah interrupted, "I swear I'll scream right here in this hallway." A student passing by gave them a curious look. Eli felt his face grow warm. He gestured toward an empty classroom, and they stepped inside. The afternoon light cast long shadows across the empty desks. "Sarah, you don't understand," he said, his voice low. "These people, they're expecting something. Someone. I'm not qualified. I never had training. I don't know how to perform for thousands of people." Sarah set the tablet down on a desk and faced him squarely. "Do you know what makes your singing special, Eli? It's not technique. It's not training. It's the raw truth in your voice. Every time you sing Rebecca's song, people feel it. They feel the love, the loss, the hope." Eli turned away, fighting the tightness in his throat. "That's exactly why I can't do it. It's too personal, too real." "And that's exactly why you should." Sarah's voice softened. "Think about all the veterans' families who will be watching. Think about those who've lost someone, who are struggling to find meaning in their grief." The silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant sound of students changing classes. Eli's fingers traced absent patterns on the cleaning cart handle. "I need to think about it," he finally said. "I need to talk to Lily." Sarah nodded, understanding in her eyes. "The memorial is in 3 weeks. They need an answer by tomorrow." As if on cue, the classroom door creaked open. Lily poked her head in, her backpack still on from the school bus. "Daddy? Mrs. Martinez said you were up here." Her face brightened when she saw Sarah. "Aunt Sarah!" Sarah swept Lily into a hug. "Perfect timing, sweetheart. Maybe you can help us convince your daddy to do something amazing." Eli watched as Sarah explained the situation to Lily, whose eyes grew wider with each word. His daughter's reaction was exactly what he'd feared: pure, unrestrained excitement. "The whole country?" Lily breathed. "Everyone would hear Mommy's song?" "That's right," Sarah confirmed, "but your dad's not sure he wants to do it." Lily turned to him, her mother's eyes staring straight into his soul. "Why not, Daddy?" Eli crouched down to her level, his knees protesting against the hard floor. "Baby, it's complicated. Sometimes things that are special to us, we need to keep them close. Protected. But you always tell me that when someone gives you a gift, you should share it," Lily countered. "Mommy gave you her song. Shouldn't we share it?" The simple wisdom of her words hit him like a physical force. He looked at his daughter, really looked at her, and saw Rebecca's spirit shining through. That same unfailing belief in the power of love to bridge any gap, heal any wound. "Daddy." Lily stepped closer, wrapping her small arms around his neck. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it filled the entire room. "Mommy would want the world to hear it." Eli closed his eyes, holding his daughter close. In that embrace, he felt the weight of his fears battling against the truth of her words. He thought of Rebecca, of her courage in choosing love over her family's approval, of her belief that music could speak what words couldn't. Finally, he pulled back, meeting Sarah's patient gaze. "Okay," he said softly. "I'll do it." Sarah's smile was radiant. "I'll make the call right now." As Sarah stepped into the hallway to handle the arrangements, Eli remained crouched on the floor, still holding Lily. His daughter's faith in him was both terrifying and strengthening. Maybe she was right. Maybe this wasn't just about him anymore. Maybe Rebecca's song had always been meant for more than just their little family. He stood up slowly, his uniform dusty from the floor. Through the classroom window, he could see the late afternoon sun painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Somewhere, he thought he could feel Rebecca smiling. The vast auditorium of the National Veterans Memorial buzzed with anticipation. Rows upon rows of people filled every seat, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of stage lights. In the wings, Eli Turner stood rigid, his hands clasped tightly together to stop them from shaking. His familiar janitor's uniform had been replaced with a simple dark suit that Sarah had helped him choose, but he'd never felt more exposed. Lily squeezed his hand. "You can do it, Daddy," she whispered, her small face glowing with pride. She wore her best dress, the blue one with tiny white flowers that Rebecca had picked out years ago. Sarah appeared beside them, clipboard in hand. "They're ready for you, Eli." Her voice was gentle. "Remember what we practiced. Just close your eyes and sing like you're back in that empty auditorium." Eli nodded, unable to form words. His throat felt dry as paper. Through the curtain, he could see the red lights of television cameras, their lenses like watching eyes. Somewhere out there, millions of people were tuning in to the memorial broadcast. The host's voice boomed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Eli Turner singing Love's Echo." Lily gave him one final squeeze before Sarah led her to their seats in the front row. Eli's legs moved automatically, carrying him into the spotlight. The stage felt enormous, and the microphone stand seemed to mock him with its sleek presence. The audience's quiet murmur faded to absolute silence. Eli gripped the microphone, his wedding ring catching the light. He could feel the weight of all those eyes on him, veterans and their families, dignitaries, cameras, broadcasting his image across the nation. His heart thundered in his chest. What was he doing here? He was just a janitor, a simple man who cleaned floors and fixed broken things. This stage wasn't meant for someone like him. But then he saw Lily in the front row, her hands clasped under her chin, eyes shining with tears and hope. Next to her, Sarah held a small leather notebook, Rebecca's songbook. The sight of it transported him back to quiet evenings when Rebecca would sit at their kitchen table, writing lyrics and humming melodies. Eli closed his eyes. The first notes of the piano introduction floated through the air, and suddenly, he wasn't on a national stage anymore. He was back in his own kitchen, Rebecca sitting cross-legged on their worn couch, singing this very song while stirring soup on the stove. The memory wrapped around him like a warm blanket. His voice emerged, soft at first, then growing stronger with each word. "When shadows fall and day grows dim, your love echoes still within. Through valleys deep and mountains high, your song lifts me to the sky." The words flowed from somewhere deep inside him, carrying years of love and loss, hope and healing. His voice filled the massive space, raw and honest, touching something universal in its simplicity. As he sang the chorus, other memories surfaced. Rebecca singing this song while rocking baby Lily to sleep, humming it while planting flowers in their small garden, whistling it while hanging laundry on sunny afternoons. All those ordinary moments made extraordinary by love. Though time may pass and seasons change, your melody remains the same. In every heart that's learned to see, love's echo sets us free. Tears rolled down his cheeks now, but his voice never wavered. the pain of loss, transformed into something beautiful, something shared. He could feel Rebecca's presence so strongly it took his breath away, not as a ghost of grief, but as a living force of love that had never truly left. The final verse came softly, almost like a prayer. When morning breaks and light returns, the song within still burns. For love's not bound by death or time, it's yours, and it is mine. As the last note faded, Eli opened his eyes. For a moment, complete silence filled the auditorium. Then, like a wave, the audience rose to their feet. Applause thundered through the space, punctuated by sounds of sniffling and quiet sobs. Veterans stood at attention, tears streaming down weathered faces. Young people held onto their grandparents. Strangers reached for each other's hands. The emotion in the room was almost tangible. Eli's own tears flowed freely now, but for the first time since Rebecca's death, they weren't tears of loneliness. In sharing their song, in letting others into their love story, something had shifted. He could feel Rebecca's presence, not as a painful reminder of what he'd lost, but as a gift he could share with others. Lily ran onto the stage and threw her arms around his waist. Sarah followed, holding Rebecca's songbook close to her heart. As the applause continued to wash over them, Eli held his daughter close and looked out at the sea of moved faces. In that moment, he wasn't just a janitor who had lost his wife. He was a man who had found his voice, sharing a love that was bigger than grief, stronger than death, and meant to be heard. The standing ovation continued, a testament to the power of love's echo. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows of Eli and Lily's modest home. The morning felt different somehow, lighter, as if the weight of years had lifted from their shoulders. Eli stood at the counter, fixing breakfast while the small TV on the counter played softly. His hands still tingled from the countless handshakes and hugs he'd received after last night's performance. "Look, Daddy, you're on TV again," Lily pointed excitedly at the screen, her cereal forgotten. The morning news showed clips from the memorial event. Eli watched himself on screen, eyes closed, singing Rebecca's song with raw emotion. The commentators spoke warmly about his performance. "A stunning debut that touched millions," one reporter said. "Social media has been flooded with responses to the janitor whose voice carried such profound grief and hope." Eli ducked his head, embarrassed by the praise. He wasn't used to attention. His life had always been about quiet service, cleaning floors, and raising Lily. The phone had been ringing all morning. Sarah had already called twice, bubbling with excitement about interview requests. "Can we watch it again?" Lily asked, her eyes shining. "You look just like an angel up there, Daddy." Eli smiled softly. "Let's eat our breakfast first, sweetheart. You've got school today." The morning show host continued discussing his performance. They showed tweets from veterans and their families, describing how the song had helped them process their own grief. Eli felt a warmth in his chest. Maybe sharing Rebecca's song had been the right choice after all. Then the screen changed. The familiar logo of a major news network appeared, and the words "Breaking News" flashed across the bottom. Eli's hand froze midway to turning off the TV. "We're bringing you a live statement from the Bennett family," the anchor announced. Eli's heart stopped. On screen appeared an elegant living room he'd never seen, but the faces, those he recognized from old photographs, Rebecca had kept hidden away. Her parents sat stiffly on an expensive-looking sofa. Mrs. Bennett wore a string of pearls, her silver hair perfectly coiffed. Mr. Bennett's face was stern, his suit impeccable. "We are deeply disturbed by last night's performance," Mr. Bennett began, his voice cold and controlled. "The song performed by Mr. Turner was our daughter Rebecca's private creation, never intended for public display. This man has no right to exploit her memory for his own gain." Eli's legs went weak. He gripped the counter for support. Mrs. Bennett spoke next, her voice trembling with what seemed like practiced emotion. "Rebecca was a gifted songwriter who made unfortunate choices in her personal life. Mr. Turner took advantage of her generous nature. He pulled her away from her family forced her to live in poverty, and now he dares to parade her most intimate expressions for public attention. "Daddy?" Lily's voice wavered. She'd never seen these grandparents, never known them except as shadows in their past. But the Bennetts weren't finished. Mr. Bennett's face hardened as he continued. "Let me be clear. This man was never worthy of our daughter. He worked as a janitor then, and he works as a janitor now. Rebecca's death was hastened by the stress of living in such reduced circumstances, and now he seeks to profit from her memory? We demand that Mr. Turner cease performing our daughter's song immediately," Mrs. Bennett added. "We will take legal action if necessary to protect Rebecca's legacy." The newscast cut to legal experts discussing potential copyright claims, but Eli barely heard them. His hands trembled so badly he had to set down the coffee pot before he dropped it. Every word had struck like a physical blow, reopening old wounds he'd thought long healed. "Those are Mommy's parents?" Lily asked in a small voice. Her lower lip quivered as she tried to understand. "But why are they being so mean? You sang so beautiful last night. Everyone was crying happy tears." Eli tried to speak, but no words came. How could he explain decades of prejudice and pain to his 10-year-old daughter? How could he tell her that her mother's family had rejected them because of the color of his skin, though they now cloaked their accusations in more socially acceptable terms? The phone rang again. Probably Sarah, who must have seen the broadcast too. Eli let it go to voicemail. His head spun with the Bennett's accusations. Had he truly exploited Rebecca's memory? The song had felt like a gift, a way to share her light with others who were hurting. But now? "Daddy?" Lily's voice cracked. She stood beside him now, her small hand reaching for his. "Why are they saying those things?" Eli looked down at his daughter's face, Rebecca's eyes staring back at him, filled with confusion and hurt. His hands shook as he tried to find words that wouldn't shatter her innocence entirely. The TV droned on, replaying the Bennett's statement. Each repetition felt like another nail in the coffin of his brief emergence from grief's shadows. The morning sunshine that had seemed so bright now felt harsh and exposing, as if spotlighting every doubt he'd ever had about himself. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. The peaceful morning shattered when the first news van pulled up outside their small house. Eli watched from behind the kitchen curtain as reporters spilled onto his front lawn like ants at a picnic. Camera lights flashed through the windows, and microphones appeared like mushrooms sprouting after rain. "Daddy?" Lily's voice quivered. She stood in her school uniform, backpack clutched tight against her chest. "How are we going to get to school?" Eli's heart ached. He'd never seen his daughter look so scared in their own home. "It's okay, sweetheart. We'll figure it out." But his words felt hollow, even to himself. The doorbell rang. Then again, and again. Phones buzzed with messages from unknown numbers. Eli pulled the curtains shut tight and called the school to let them know Lily wouldn't be coming in today. Mrs. Martinez from next door peered over their shared fence, her usual friendly wave replaced by a worried frown. Other neighbors gathered in small clusters on their porches, pointing and whispering. Eli could read their lips. "Did you see the news? Those awful things they said. Poor man." By mid-morning, his cell phone vibrated with a message from Mr. Patterson, the head of facilities at the college. "Need to see you in my office. ASAP." Eli's stomach churned. He called Sarah, who agreed to watch Lily while he went to work. When Sarah arrived, she had to push through a crowd of reporters, their questions flying like arrows. "Mr. Turner, how do you respond to the Lawrence family's accusations? Is it true you're profiting from your dead wife's legacy? What do you say to claims you contributed to Rebecca's early death?" Each word stung worse than the last. Eli slipped out the back door, cutting through yards until he reached his truck parked a block away. The college campus wasn't much better. Students pointed as he passed. Some offered sympathetic smiles, but others turned away. In the maintenance break room, conversations stopped when he entered. His co-workers, people he'd worked alongside for years, suddenly found their coffee cups fascinating. Mr. Patterson's office felt colder than usual. The facility manager sat behind his desk, fingers steepled, face grave. "Eli, You've been an excellent employee for 15 years. The past tense made Eli's heart skip. But this situation is causing disruption. Reporters are trying to get on campus. Students are distracted. The board is concerned about the college's image being drawn into this controversy. Sir, I just sang a song, Eli said quietly. That's all. A song that's causing quite a stir. Mr. Patterson sighed. Look, I'm not firing you, but maybe take some time off, paid leave until this dies down? It wasn't a suggestion. Eli nodded numbly. When he returned home, the reporters had multiplied. Sarah met him at the back door, her face drawn. The Lawrence family gave another interview. They're saying Rebecca wrote the song about someone else, before she met you. They're claiming you had no right to it. Eli sank into a kitchen chair. Where's Lily? In her room, drawing. She's trying to be brave, but... Sarah squeezed his shoulder. What are you going to do? The question echoed in his head long after Sarah left, long after he'd made Lily dinner and tucked her into bed. Now, sitting alone in the dark living room, Eli could hear the occasional camera click outside, see shadows moving past the windows. He pulled out Rebecca's old photo from his wallet. Her smile, captured in fading color, seemed different tonight. Was she judging him too? The song had been their private moment, their sacred space. Now it belonged to everyone, twisted, questioned, dissected. His fingers traced her face in the photo. Was I selfish to sing your song? He whispered into the darkness. Did I betray what we had by sharing it? The house creaked its empty answer. Outside, another camera flashed, and Eli Turner, just a janitor who dared to sing his heart, sat alone with his doubts, wondering if love's memory was better left in silence. The mounting pressure squeezed his chest. Everything he thought he knew about his marriage, about Rebecca's love, about his own worth, it all felt like sand slipping through his fingers. He'd stepped into the light for one brief, beautiful moment, and now the shadows seemed darker than ever. In the quiet of night, Eli confronted the possibility that in trying to honor Rebecca's memory, he might have tarnished it instead. The thought sat heavy in his stomach, a weight of guilt he wasn't sure he could bear. He looked at the small stage setup in the corner of their living room where he practiced, just a microphone stand and his old guitar. It seemed to mock him now, a symbol of his presumption. Who was he to think he deserved to share this gift? Maybe Rebecca's parents were right. Maybe he was just a janitor who'd reached too far, tried to be something he wasn't. The doubt crept in like a fog, thick and suffocating. Every criticism he'd heard today played on repeat in his mind, growing louder in the darkness. The whispers of neighbors, the averted eyes of coworkers, the harsh words of Rebecca's family, they all blended into a chorus of judgment that threatened to overwhelm him. In the silence of his home, surrounded by the chaos he'd unwittingly created, Eli Turner faced the question that would haunt his dreams: was I selfish to sing her song? The doorbell rang, just as Eli finished packing Lily's lunch for school. His shoulders tensed. Another reporter? He'd already unplugged the phone last night after the 100th call. Through the peephole, he saw Sarah's familiar face, streaked with tears and mascara. Sarah? He opened the door cautiously, checking for cameras. Come in, quick. She stumbled inside, her usually perfect appearance disheveled. Her designer blazer was wrinkled, and her hands shook as she clutched her purse. Eli, I'm so sorry. I didn't know they would. I never thought. Uncle Eli! Jenny, Lily's best friend from next door, called from the driveway. Mom says we're ready to take Lily to school. Coming, Eli shouted back. He turned to his daughter, who stood frozen in the hallway, staring at her aunt's tears. Go on, sweetie. Jenny's mom will drive you today. I'll pick you up after school. Lily nodded, giving Sarah a quick, worried hug before hurrying out. The door clicked shut, leaving them alone in the suddenly too quiet house. They're my parents, Eli. Sarah's voice cracked. She sank onto the worn couch, the same one where they'd looked through Rebecca's photos just weeks ago. They'd been calling non-stop since the memorial broadcast, screaming, threatening to cut me off completely if I don't denounce you publicly. Eli's throat tightened. He remained standing, his janitor's uniform half-buttoned, already late for work. "I never meant to cause trouble. The song. It was just supposed to help people heal." "I know that." Sarah pressed her palms against her eyes. "But Mom and Dad, they're saying horrible things. That Rebecca only married you because she was young and rebellious. That you kept her from coming home when she got sick, that you're using her memory for fame." Each accusation felt like a physical blow. Eli steadied himself against the wall, where a photo of Rebecca hung, her smile radiant, her arms around him at their small wedding. "None of that is true. We were happy. She chose me." "I believe you." Sarah looked up, her face torn. "But they're my parents, Eli. They're all the family I have left besides you and Lily. They're talking about legal action, about Rebecca's intellectual property rights to the song." "The song was ours," Eli said quietly. "We wrote it together, late at night when she couldn't sleep. She'd hum the melody, I'd add words. It was our prayer when times got hard." Sarah stood suddenly, pacing the small living room. Outside, another news van crawled past the house. "They want me to go on TV, to support their side of the story. They say if I don't, I'll never be welcome home again." The weight of everything, the reporters, the accusations, the threats, pressed down on Eli's chest. He thought of his simple life before, cleaning floors, raising Lily, keeping Rebecca's memory safe in his heart. Now, it was all unraveling. "What are you going to do?" he asked, though he already knew the answer from Sarah's face. She turned to him, tears flowing freely now. "They're my parents, Eli. I lost Rebecca because of their stubbornness. I can't lose them too. I'm not strong like she was." Eli felt something inside him crack. Sarah had been his lifeline these past weeks, the bridge to Rebecca's past, a glimpse of family he never knew they had. Now she too would abandon them. "I understand," he said, though his voice sounded hollow even to himself. Maybe if we just wait. Let things cool down. They might come around eventually." Sarah's words rang false, desperate attempts at comfort. Eli shook his head slowly. "No, they won't. They never accepted me before, and they won't now." Sarah reached for him, but he stepped back. Her hand fell limply to her side. "I'm so sorry, Eli. I want to support you, but I don't know if I can choose between you and them. It would kill me to lose another family." The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Through the window, Eli could see reporters setting up cameras on his lawn. His workplace had already warned him about the disruption. The song that had brought so much hope to others was now destroying everything he'd rebuilt after Rebecca's death. "You should go," he said quietly. "Your parents are waiting." Sarah moved toward the door, then paused. "Tell Lily I love her, and Eli. Rebecca would be proud of you, no matter what anyone says." He couldn't answer. The door opened and closed softly. Through the window, he watched Sarah hurry to her car, head down to avoid the cameras. The reporters swarmed her, microphones thrust forward, but she pushed through without comment. Alone in his living room, surrounded by Rebecca's photos and memories, Eli felt the full weight of his solitude crash down. The song that had been their private love story, their shared strength, now felt like a betrayal. He sank onto the couch, head in his hands, and for the first time since Rebecca's funeral, allowed himself to weep. The television droned in the background, muted, but still showing footage from the memorial performance. His own face stared back at him, eyes closed in emotion as he sang their song. Now it felt like a mistake, like he'd exposed something precious to harsh lights that could only destroy it. His phone buzzed, probably work wondering where he was. But Eli couldn't move. Sarah's departure felt like losing Rebecca all over again, another piece of her slipping away. The morning light filtered through the curtains, casting shadows on the floor he'd have to clean somewhere else today, in another building where nobody knew his name or his story. Outside, the cameras waited. Inside, the silence echoed with Sarah's last words. "I don't know if I can choose between you and them." And in that moment, sitting alone in his modest home with Rebecca's photos watching over him, Eli Turner, janitor, widower, father, sank deeper into despair. The autumn wind rattled the windows of Eli's small house as he mechanically went through his morning routine. The kitchen radio, once always playing soft gospel tunes, stayed silent. The morning paper lay unopened on the counter, probably containing more stories about him, the janitor who dared to sing his dead wife's song. Lily watched from the doorway, her backpack clutched tight against her chest. Dark circles shadowed her young eyes, testament to nights spent listening to her father's muffled crying through their thin walls. "Daddy, want me to make toast?" "Not hungry, sweetheart." His voice was barely above a whisper these days. He hadn't sung a note in 3 weeks, not since the Bennetts' public denouncement. Even humming felt like a betrayal now. At work, Eli kept his head down, focusing on the endless cycle of mopping and sweeping. Students who once smiled and waved now whispered behind their hands as he passed. His supervisor had cut his hours, claiming budget issues, but Eli knew better. The controversy was bad for the college's image. The cleaning cart's squeaky wheel echoed through empty hallways as he worked. Where once he might have hummed to himself, now there was only the sound of his breathing and the swish of his mop across worn linoleum. The melody of Rebecca's song still lived in his head, but he refused to let it out. It felt safer, locked away, like a bird in a cage. During lunch break, he sat alone in the maintenance closet, picking at a sandwich he couldn't taste. His phone buzzed, another message from Sarah. He hadn't answered her calls in days. What was there to say? Her parents had made their position clear, and she was caught in the middle. Better to let her go, like the song. After school, Lily's teacher pulled him aside. "Mr. Turner, I'm concerned. Lily seems withdrawn lately. She's not participating in music class anymore." The guilt hit him like a physical blow. His daughter, who used to sing along with him in the car, who begged him to teach her the old hymns, she was going silent too. He was teaching her the wrong lesson, showing her that love should be hidden away when times got tough. That evening, he found Lily's sketchbook open on the kitchen table. The latest drawing showed 2 figures on a stage, him and Rebecca, he realized with a start. But Rebecca's figure was fading away, like a ghost, while his figure stood alone with his head bowed. Below it, Lily had written in her careful child's handwriting, "Daddy's song is getting quiet." The house felt too small suddenly, too full of memories and silence. After putting Lily to bed, he drove back to the college. The night watchman knew him, let him in without question. His feet carried him to the auditorium, where it had all started. The vast empty space welcomed him with familiar shadows. He walked slowly down the center aisle, remembering the night of the showcase, the standing ovation, the tears in strangers' eyes, the way the song had filled every corner of the room with Rebecca's love. Settling into a front row seat, he pulled out his cleaning supplies. The broom felt solid in his hands, a reminder of who he really was. Just a janitor, not a singer. Not someone worthy of sharing Rebecca's gift with the world. A tiny sound escaped him, not quite a hum, more like a sigh with melody attached. He caught himself, pressed his lips together. But in the darkness, Rebecca's song felt closer than ever, like a friend waiting patiently for him to remember its comfort. The stage lights were off, but moonlight filtered through the high windows, casting gentle shadows. Eli found himself walking up the steps to the stage, broom still in hand. His footsteps echoed in the emptiness. Standing center stage, he gripped the broom like a microphone stand. The first notes came unbidden, barely audible. The familiar melody wrapped around him like a warm embrace, and tears began rolling down his cheeks. "Daddy?" Lily's voice startled him. She stood in the doorway, still in her pajamas and winter coat, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Behind her, he glimpsed Mrs. Johnson, their elderly neighbor who must have driven her here. "Baby? What are you doing here?" His voice cracked. "I followed you." Lily walked down the aisle, her small feet silent on the carpet. "I knew you'd come here. This is where the song lives." She climbed the stairs to join him on stage, her face serious in the moonlight. "Daddy, the song isn't just Mommy's, it's ours." The simple truth in her words broke something open inside him. He sank to his knees, the broom clattering to the floor. Lily's arms went around his neck as great, heaving sobs shook his body. "I miss her so much," he whispered into his daughter's shoulder. "Me too." Lily's voice trembled. "But when you sing, it's like she's here with us. Please don't lock her away again." Eli held his daughter tight, letting the tears flow freely now. The song hummed between them, soft but persistent, like a heartbeat that had never really stopped. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the community college windows as Eli pushed his cleaning cart down the empty hallway. His footsteps echoed against the linoleum, matching the hollow feeling in his chest. 3 weeks had passed since he'd last sung a note. The squeak of the maintenance closet door made him wince. As he reached for the mop bucket, rapid footsteps approached from behind. "Eli, thank God you're still here." He turned to find Sarah standing in the doorway, breathless and clutching a worn leather-bound book to her chest. Her usually neat appearance was disheveled, as if she'd been running. "Sarah?" Eli's voice was guarded. "I thought you'd—" I know I've been absent, but listen." She thrust the book toward him. "I found it, in my old storage unit, Rebecca's journal." Eli's hands trembled as he took the book. The leather was soft with age, and a familiar scent, Rebecca's perfume still, clung faintly to its pages. His throat tightened. "I stayed up all night reading it," Sarah said, her eyes bright with tears. "Eli, you need to see what she wrote about you. About everything." They moved to the empty teacher's lounge. Eli sank into a worn armchair, while Sarah perched on the edge of another, opening the journal with careful fingers. "Here," she said, finding a marked page. "This is from right after she met you." Sarah's voice filled the quiet room as she read. "Today I met a man who sees me, truly sees me. Not the proper daughter my parents want. Not the society wife they dream of. Just me. His name is Eli Turner, and when he smiled at me across that crowded church potluck, something in my soul recognized him." Eli pressed a hand to his mouth, remembering that day. Rebecca, in her yellow sundress, laughing as she helped him clean up a spilled punch bowl. Sarah turned pages, continuing. "Mother and father are furious, of course. They say Eli isn't our kind. But they don't know him. They don't see how his eyes light up when he talks about music, or how gently he helps elderly Mrs. Wilson with her groceries every Tuesday. They don't understand that love doesn't see color or class, it sees hearts." Tears rolled down Eli's cheeks now. He remembered Mrs. Wilson, how Rebecca would join him in carrying those bags, both of them singing hymns with the old woman on her porch afterward. "There's more," Sarah said softly. She flipped to another marked section. "They gave me an ultimatum today. Choose the family name and fortune, or choose Eli." "They thought it would be a hard decision." Sarah's voice cracked. "It wasn't, because Eli Turner has more wealth in his kind heart than my parents have in all their bank accounts. When he sings, I hear God's love. When he holds my hand, I feel complete. I choose him. I will always choose him." The words hit Eli like physical blows, breaking through the walls of doubt he'd built around his heart. Rebecca's voice, so clear in her written words, filled the empty spaces inside him. Sarah wiped her eyes and read on. "Today we sang together in the car that old gospel song Mama used to hum." Eli's voice carries such raw truth. He doesn't believe in his gift, says he's just a janitor. But I see him. I see the way music flows through him like light through stained glass. One day, I hope the world will hear what I hear. Eli's shoulders shook with silent sobs. He remembered that drive, how Rebecca had reached over and squeezed his hand, her smile brighter than the setting sun. "And this," Sarah said, her finger trailing down another page, "this was written just months before we lost her." She took a steadying breath. "The doctors say I don't have long, but I'm not afraid. Eli has given me a lifetime of love in these few precious years. My only regret is that our song might die with me. I've asked God to keep it alive somehow, to let it reach others who need hope, because that's what Eli's voice does, it gives people hope." The journal slipped from Sarah's hands onto the coffee table. She moved to kneel beside Eli's chair, taking his trembling hands in hers. "She chose you, Eli. She chose you every single day. And she wanted your voice, your gift, to keep touching lives." Eli reached for the journal with unsteady fingers. Opening it to a random page, he saw Rebecca's familiar handwriting, the way she dotted her I's with tiny hearts. His tears fell onto the paper as he read her words. "When Eli sings, angels pause to listen. He doesn't know his own worth. But I do. I do. She chose me," he whispered, clutching the journal to his chest. "She always did." Something shifted inside him, like ice breaking up in spring. The weight of doubt and unworthiness began to crack and fall away. In its place, a new strength rose steady and sure as Rebecca's love had always been. Sarah squeezed his shoulder gently. "She did, Eli. And now you have to choose too. Choose to keep her song alive. Choose to let your voice be the gift she always knew it was." Eli nodded slowly, feeling Rebecca's presence in every word written on those pages. The journal in his hands wasn't just paper and ink, it was her voice, reaching across time to remind him of who he was. Who they were together. A janitor who sang like angels paused to listen, a man worthy of great love, a keeper of sacred songs. He held the journal close, his tears finally slowing. "She chose me," he repeated, stronger this time. "She always did." Sarah's hands trembled as she held her phone, her manicured finger hovering over the post button. She looked across the small kitchen table at Eli and Lily, who sat close together, their faces a mix of hope and worry. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" Sarah asked, her voice soft. "Once I share these, there's no taking them back." Eli nodded slowly, clutching Rebecca's journal to his chest. "She deserves to be heard. Her words deserve to be known." Sarah pressed the button. Within minutes, Rebecca's words began spreading across social media. "My dearest Eli, they say our love is wrong, but they don't see what I see. When you sing, your voice carries all the kindness in your heart. I choose you today, tomorrow, and always. Let them talk. Let them judge. Our love is stronger than their hatred." Lily peered at her father's phone as more messages appeared. "Look, Daddy, people are sharing Mommy's words." The responses flooded in faster than they could read them. News outlets picked up the story. Rebecca's journal entries painted a picture of a woman who had chosen love over prejudice, who had found joy in a simple life with a kind man. Today, Eli sang while making dinner. He doesn't know how beautiful his voice is. He thinks he's just a janitor, but he's so much more. He's the man who stops to help strangers change their tires, the one who brings soup to sick neighbors, the one who works extra hours so I can pursue my dreams. If my family could see him through my eyes. Sarah's phone rang constantly. Television stations wanted interviews, but she screened the calls carefully, protecting Eli and Lily from the media circus. Instead, she focused on sharing more of Rebecca's words, letting her sister's voice echo across the digital landscape. By evening, Rebecca's parents' accusations had been drowned out by an outpouring of support. People shared their own stories of love overcoming prejudice, of choosing happiness over family approval, of finding beauty in simple lives lived with extraordinary love. Eli sat in his worn armchair, overwhelmed by the messages that kept appearing. "Your wife's words moved me to tears. Thank you for sharing her story with us. Your love story gives me hope." Lily curled up next to him, reading the comments out loud. Her voice grew excited with each new message. "See, Daddy? People understand now. They know how special you and Mommy were." Sarah stayed with them, fielding calls and managing the growing response. She ordered pizza when dinner time came, none of them willing to step away from the unfolding story. The small living room felt warm, with shared memories and renewed purpose. As the evening deepened, a particular email caught Sarah's attention. Her sharp intake of breath made Eli look up. "This one's different," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "It's from a widow in Ohio." She handed her tablet to Eli. His hands shook slightly as he read. Dear Mr. Turner, I lost my husband 6 months ago. Since then, I've been going through the motions, barely living. But when I read your wife's words today, something broke open inside me. Her love for you, your love for her. It reached across time and touched my heart. I've been afraid to listen to music since James died. It hurt too much. But today, I found your performance from the Veterans Memorial online. I watched it again and again. Your voice carried such love, such grief, but also such hope. For the first time since James passed, I felt like maybe it's okay to keep living. To honor love by sharing it, just as you're doing with Rebecca's song. Thank you for showing me that love doesn't end with death, it just changes form. With deepest gratitude, Margaret Wilson. Eli lowered the tablet, his vision blurring. Lily squeezed his hand, and Sarah wiped her eyes with a tissue. The room fell quiet except for the soft ping of incoming messages. Maybe this is why, Eli whispered, his voice rough with emotion. He ran his fingers over the worn cover of Rebecca's journal, feeling the indent of her pen strokes through the pages. All these years, she had been writing not just to him, but to a world that needed to hear their story. Sarah reached across and squeezed his shoulder. Rebecca always said your voice had the power to heal hearts. She knew, Eli. She knew all along. Through the window, stars began appearing in the darkening sky. In their gentle light, Rebecca's words continued to spread, touching lives, mending hearts, and proving that love's echo could reach far beyond the boundaries of time and prejudice. The community center's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Eli stood in the hallway, staring at the bright yellow flyer in his hands. The paper trembled slightly in his grip. Community Revival Concert, it announced in bold letters. Special guest performance by Eli Turner. Pastor Mike, a kind-faced man with salt and pepper hair, waited patiently beside him. The whole community wants to hear you sing again, Eli. They're standing with you. Eli's throat felt tight. He folded the flyer carefully, creasing it with precision, buying time before he had to respond. The memories of his last public performance and the backlash that followed were still raw. I don't know, Pastor, he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. After everything that happened. That's exactly why you should do it, Pastor Mike insisted gently. Show them that love and truth win in the end. Sarah shared those journal entries for a reason. Eli's hand unconsciously moved to his chest pocket, where he kept a folded copy of Rebecca's words. The journal entries Sarah had shared online had changed everything. Support had poured in from across the country, people, touched by the story of their love, moved by Rebecca's courage to choose love over prejudice. Still, fear lingered. What if? Daddy! Lily's voice echoed down the hallway as she ran toward them, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. She'd just finished her after-school program at the community center. Her eyes lit up when she saw the flyer in his hands. Is that for the concert? Pastor Mike smiled warmly at her. I was just asking your father to perform. Lily's face broke into a wide grin, but then she noticed her father's hesitation. She reached for his hand, her small fingers intertwining with his work-roughened ones. Her voice grew serious, carrying wisdom beyond her years. We could sing together, Daddy. Eli looked down at his daughter, surprised. Together? Uh-huh. Lily nodded eagerly. I've been practicing with Miss Sarah. She's been teaching me the harmony parts that Mommy used to sing. Eli's heart clenched. He hadn't known about these secret practice sessions. The thought of his daughter learning her mother's harmonies made his chest ache with a bittersweet mix of joy and sadness. When did you? Every Tuesday after school, Lily admitted, suddenly shy. I wanted it to be a surprise, but maybe now is the right time to show you. Pastor Mike stepped back discreetly, giving them space. Lily tugged on her father's hand, leading him to the community center's small chapel. The room was empty except for a worn piano in the corner, afternoon sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows and painting the floor in patches of color. Lily sat at the piano, her feet barely reaching the pedals. Her fingers found the opening notes of Rebecca's song, the same melody that had started everything months ago in that college auditorium. When she began to sing, Eli's breath caught. Her voice was clear and pure, carrying echoes of Rebecca's sweetness. She sang the harmony line that her mother had always sung, the part that had made their duets so special. Tears welled in Eli's eyes. Without conscious thought, he joined in, his deep voice blending with Lily's higher one. The harmony was different from when he'd sung with Rebecca, but it held its own beauty, a bridge between past and present, between loss and hope. Their voices filled the small chapel, father and daughter singing the song that had brought both pain and healing. When the last note faded, Lily looked up at him with shining eyes. "See, Daddy? It's not just your story anymore. It's mine too. And Mommy's watching over both of us when we sing." Eli pulled her into a tight hug, his tears falling into her hair. She was right. The song had evolved beyond his private grief, beyond even Rebecca's memory. It had become something new, a testament to love's ability to grow and change, to heal and connect. Pastor Mike appeared in the doorway, having heard their impromptu performance. "That was beautiful," he said softly. "That's what people need to hear, not just the song, but the love behind it, the way it lives on through both of you." Eli looked down at the flyer he'd crumpled in his emotion, smoothing it out carefully. The fear was still there, but it was different now. Instead of paralyzing him, it felt like a reminder of how far they'd come, how much they'd overcome. Lily squeezed his hand. "We'll sing together, Daddy, just like we did now." Looking at his daughter's hopeful face, Eli saw Rebecca's strength shining through. He saw the truth of what this song had become, just a reminder of loss, but a celebration of continuing love, of family bonds that couldn't be broken by death or distance or other people's judgment. He turned to Pastor Mike, who waited patiently. Eli's voice was steady as he finally answered, "Yes, we'll do it, both of us." Lily bounced with excitement, but then grew serious. "Can we practice a lot before then? I want it to be perfect." Eli hugged her again, overwhelmed by how much she'd grown, how she'd found her own connection to the song that had once been too painful for him to share. She wasn't just asking to perform, she was claiming her place in the story, making it her own. Pastor Mike smiled. "The concert's in 3 weeks. That should give you plenty of time to practice." Eli nodded, realizing this was more than just another performance. It was a new chapter for both of them, a way to honor Rebecca's memory while creating something new. The song wasn't just his anymore, it was Lily's too, and somehow that made it even more precious. The late afternoon sun filtered through the threadbare curtains of their small living room, casting a warm glow across the worn carpet. Eli sat on their old plaid couch, holding Rebecca's guitar, newly restrung and polished by Sarah. Lily perched next to him, her feet barely touching the floor, her eyes wide with anticipation. "Like this, sweetheart," Eli demonstrated, positioning her small fingers on the frets. "Just press down firmly right here." Lily's tongue poked out in concentration as she tried to copy his hand position. The guitar seemed enormous in her lap, but her determination shone in her eyes. "Is this right, Daddy?" "Almost." Eli gently adjusted her fingers. "There you go. Now strum." A wobbly chord rang out. Not quite perfect, but full of promise. Lily's face lit up with a proud smile that reminded him so much of Rebecca it made his heart ache. A soft knock at the door announced Sarah's arrival. She entered carrying sheet music and a smaller guitar case. "I thought this might be easier for those tiny hands," she said, presenting Lily with a 3/4 size acoustic guitar. "Really?" Lily bounced with excitement. "Is it mine?" "It was your mom's first guitar," Sarah explained, running her hand along the smooth wood. "She learned on this when she was about your age." Eli watched as Lily carefully took the instrument, cradling it like it was made of glass. His eyes met Sarah's in silent gratitude. They spent the next hour working through the basics. Lily's determination never wavered, even when her fingers hurt from pressing the strings. She insisted on learning the simple chord progression that formed the backbone of Rebecca's song. "Ready to try singing together?" Eli asked, settling back with the full-size guitar. Lily nodded, though her lower lip trembled slightly. "What if I mess up?" "Then we'll try again," Eli assured her. "That's what practice is for." Sarah sat in the armchair watching with misty eyes as father and daughter began to sing. Lily's voice was sweet and clear, though occasionally uncertain. Eli's deeper tones supported her, creating a tender harmony that filled their modest living room with warmth. "Amazing grace, how sweet the sound," they sang together. Lily stumbled over a few words, but Eli never faltered, keeping the rhythm steady for her to find her way back. "That's it," he encouraged between verses. "Just feel the music, baby. Don't worry about being perfect." They practiced until the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the floor. Sarah offered occasional suggestions, helping them blend their voices more smoothly. When Lily's voice grew tired, they took breaks for water and Sarah's homemade cookies. During one such break, Lily traced the worn edges of her mother's guitar. "Did Mom really play this?" "She sure did," Sarah smiled, sharing a look with Eli. "She used to practice for hours in our backyard. Said the birds were her audience." "Just like you practice for Mr. Whiskers," Eli added, referring to their tabby cat who often curled up to listen to their rehearsals. As they resumed practicing, something magical began to happen. Lily's voice grew stronger, more confident. When she hit a particularly sweet note, Eli's eyes welled with tears. It was as if Rebecca's spirit floated in the air around them, blessing their harmony. The kitchen clock ticked steadily as they worked through the song again and again. Mr. Whiskers padded in to observe, purring his approval from his perch on the windowsill. Outside, crickets began their evening chorus, providing a gentle backdrop to their music. "One more time," Lily insisted, even as fatigue crept into her voice. "Please, Daddy?" Eli couldn't refuse. They began again, their voices rising and falling together like waves. This time, something clicked. Their harmony found a perfect balance. Tones. Lily's clear, innocent tones weaving through Eli's rich baritone like sunshine through leaves. As the last notes faded, silence filled the room. Sarah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Rebecca would be so proud of both of you," she whispered. Eli set his guitar aside and pulled Lily close, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "We're ready," he said softly, his voice full of quiet confidence. Mr. Whiskers stretched and meowed his agreement, making them all laugh. The tension that had built during practice dissolved into peaceful contentment as twilight settled around their little family. Lily hugged her mother's guitar close, her small fingers still pressing phantom chords. Sarah began gathering the sheet music, humming softly to herself. In that moment, their living room felt like sacred ground, blessed by music and memory and love. The evening wrapped around them like a warm blanket as they sat together, surrounded by the lingering echoes of their song. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for now, they had this moment, father and daughter, united in music, carrying Rebecca's legacy forward in perfect harmony. The old church's wooden doors groaned under the pressure of the gathering crowd. People squeezed into every available space, filling the worn wooden pews until they creaked. The evening sun streamed through stained glass windows, painting rainbow patterns across the faces of those who had come to witness something special. Sarah Bennett sat in the front row, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her professional demeanor had softened, replaced by an almost childlike nervousness. Around her, neighbors who had known Eli for years shared knowing looks and whispered encouragements. Even those who had doubted him were there, curiosity drawing them in despite their reservations. Backstage, in a small room that usually served as the pastor's study, Eli Turner adjusted the collar of his simple blue dress shirt. His hands trembled slightly as he helped Lily with her white ribbon. She wore her Sunday best, a yellow dress that Rebecca had bought her just before. "You okay, Daddy?" Lily's small voice cut through his thoughts. She reached up and straightened his collar with the careful determination of someone twice her age. "Just nervous, sweetheart." Eli managed a smile, though his heart hammered against his ribs. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea. "It was the best idea," Lily said firmly, sounding so much like her mother that Eli's breath caught. "Remember what you always tell me? Being brave doesn't mean not being scared?" Through the thin walls, they could hear the murmur of the crowd growing louder. The church's old ventilation system hummed, barely keeping up with the warmth of so many bodies packed together. Someone was testing the microphone with soft taps that echoed through the building. Sarah appeared in the doorway, her face flushed with emotion. "They're ready for you both." She hesitated, then stepped forward to hug them quickly. "Rebecca would be so proud of you. Both of you." Eli picked up the guitar. Rebecca's guitar. Its wood smooth and familiar under his calloused hands. Lily grabbed her small music folder, clutching it to her chest like a shield. Together, they walked down the narrow hallway toward the stage. The lights felt hot and bright as they stepped out. Eli blinked, taking in the sea of faces. There were his regular customers from the college cafeteria, the veterans he'd sung for at the community center, teachers who had helped Lily through her grief, and countless others whose lives had somehow intersected with theirs. Someone had placed 2 wooden stools center stage. Eli helped Lily onto hers before settling onto his own. The microphone picked up every sound, the scrape of the guitar against his button, Lily's small cough, his own shaky breath. "Evening, everyone," Eli spoke softly into the microphone. His voice wavered slightly. "Most of you know this song. It was my wife Rebecca's favorite. She used to sing it while doing dishes, while gardening, while rocking our baby girl to sleep." He paused, swallowing hard. "Tonight, that baby girl is going to help me share it with you." A ripple of tender sighs moved through the audience. Lily sat up straighter, her chin high despite her obvious nervousness. Her small hands gripped the edge of her music folder so tightly her knuckles were white. Eli's fingers found their position on the guitar strings, muscle memory from countless nights of private comfort. He began to play the gentle opening notes, letting them float out over the hushed congregation. The familiar melody wrapped around him like an old friend. Then, surprising everyone, it was Lily who began to sing first. Her young voice, clear as a bell, carried the first verse. "When morning feels too heavy, and night brings no relief, I remember what you told me about faith beyond belief." Eli's heart swelled as he joined in, their voices weaving together on the chorus. His deep, weathered tones supported her pure, high notes like 2 birds in flight. The harmony they created was imperfect but achingly beautiful, a father and daughter bound by love and loss, yet singing of hope. The audience sat transfixed. Sarah covered her mouth with her hand, tears streaming freely down her face. Even the most skeptical listeners leaned forward in their seats, caught up in the raw emotion pouring from the stage. As they moved into the second verse, Eli's voice grew stronger. The words that had once brought such pain now felt like healing. "Love doesn't die with goodbye. It echoes through the years, dancing in the memories, swimming in our tears." Lily reached over and took his hand during the instrumental bridge, never missing a note. Her small fingers squeezed his larger ones in perfect time with the music. The gesture nearly undid him, but somehow made him stronger too. The final chorus approached, and something extraordinary happened. Without prompting, voices from the congregation began to join in, softly at first, then with growing confidence. The harmonies multiplied, filled the space, reached toward the rafters. People began to stand, one by one, then in waves. Hands raised skyward, swaying gently with the music. Tears flowed freely, but they were tears of joy, of release, of connection. The song had become more than just a melody. It was a bridge between hearts, between heaven and earth, between what was lost and what remained. Eli and Lily's voices soared above it all, father and daughter, past and future, pain and hope, all wrapped up in notes that seemed to glow in the air. The guitar's final chord rang out, pure and true, hanging in the perfect silence that followed. The last notes of the song faded into hushed silence. Eli and Lily stood together on the small wooden stage, their hands clasped tightly. The church remained perfectly still for a long moment, as if no one dared break the spell that had settled over the congregation. Then, like a wave breaking against the shore, applause erupted through the sanctuary. Eli squeezed Lily's hand, looking down at his daughter with eyes full of pride and love. She beamed back at him, her cheeks flushed with excitement. Together, they had done what seemed impossible. They had brought Rebecca's song back to life, making it their own while honoring her memory. As the applause continued, Sarah made her way through the crowd toward the stage. Her usual composed demeanor had crumbled, replaced by raw emotion that showed plainly on her face. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but unlike the tears of past months, these spoke of healing rather than hurt. She reached the edge of the stage, and Eli helped her up. Without hesitation, she threw her arms around both him and Lily, pulling them into a tight embrace. Her body shook with quiet sobs. "I'm so sorry," she whispered against Eli's shoulder. "I'm sorry I ever doubted. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to stand with you from the start." She pulled back slightly, looking into his eyes. "You gave my sister back to me tonight. Through that song, through your love for her." I heard her voice again. Lily wrapped her small arms around Sarah's waist. "Does this mean you're staying, Aunt Sarah? For good?" Sarah knelt down to Lily's level, gently brushing a strand of hair from the girl's face. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere. Your mama would never forgive me if I abandoned her family again." The crowd had begun to disperse, but a small group lingered near the back of the church. Eli noticed them first, their familiar features unmistakably marking them as Rebecca's relatives. His heart tightened in his chest, remembering years of rejection and recent accusations. Sarah followed his gaze and stiffened slightly. But instead of hostility, the faces of Rebecca's extended family showed something different: regret, shame, and hope mixed together in uncertain expressions. Slowly, they made their way forward. An elderly aunt, Rebecca's cousin Thomas, and several others Eli recognized from old photographs. They approached cautiously, like wounded animals unsure of their welcome. Thomas spoke first, his voice rough with emotion. "Mr. Turner, Eli, we've been so wrong." He twisted his hands together nervously. "Watching you tonight, hearing Rebecca's song sung with such love, we finally understood what she saw in you all those years ago." The elderly aunt stepped forward, her lined face wet with tears. "We let pride and prejudice blind us to the truth of your love. Rebecca chose you because you saw her heart, not just her family name. We were too foolish to understand that then." One by one, they approached, offering words of remorse and asking for forgiveness. Each interaction felt like another stitch closing an old wound that had been left to fester for far too long. Lily watched it all with wide eyes, holding tight to her father's hand. These people were strangers to her, yet they were also part of her heritage, pieces of her mother's story she had never known. A younger cousin, who must have been just a teenager when Rebecca died, knelt before Lily. "You look so much like her," she said softly. "She would have been so proud of you both tonight." Sarah stood beside Eli through it all, her presence steady and supportive. She had found her own courage in his example, choosing love over old grievances. Now, watching her family members do the same, she felt a weight lifting from her shoulders that she hadn't even realized she'd been carrying. The church had nearly emptied, leaving their small group in the warm glow of sunset streaming through the stained glass. The moment felt sacred, not just because of the setting, but because of the healing taking place within these walls. An old hymnal sat open on a nearby pew, its pages catching the colored light. Eli remembered how Rebecca used to say that music could bridge any divide, heal any hurt, if only people would let it. Tonight had proved her right in ways he never could have imagined. Thomas cleared his throat, looking at both Eli and Sarah. "We can't change the past," he said, "but maybe we could be part of your future. Get to know Lily, share our memories of Rebecca with her." Before Eli could respond, Lily tugged on his sleeve. "Can they, Daddy? I want to know everything about Mama." Eli looked at his daughter's hopeful face, then at Sarah's encouraging smile, and finally at the earnest expressions of Rebecca's family. He thought about how Rebecca had always believed in second chances. in the power of forgiveness to transform lives. Monday morning came with golden sunlight streaming through the community college's tall windows. Eli Turner pushed his cleaning cart down the familiar hallway, but something was different. His steps were lighter, his shoulders straighter. As he worked, a gentle melody escaped his lips, the same song that had changed everything, but now it felt less like a wound and more like a warm embrace. Two students passed by, their backpacks slung over their shoulders. Instead of hurrying past like they used to, they stopped. "Good morning, Mr. Turner," the taller one said, her eyes bright with recognition. "That was beautiful, what you and your daughter did at the revival." Eli's weathered face creased into a smile. "Thank you," he said softly, no longer hiding behind silence. Music has a way of touching hearts. Throughout the day, similar moments repeated themselves. Professor Jenkins from the English department paused his lecture preparation to shake Eli's hand. The cafeteria staff saved him an extra cup of coffee. Even the dean nodded respectfully when their paths crossed. In the auditorium where it all began, Eli took special care with the stage floor. His mop moved in steady strokes across the wooden boards where he and Lily had stood together. The memory was fresh, her small voice joining his, her presence giving him strength he never knew he had. "Mr. Turner?" A student's voice echoed from the back of the hall. It was Maria, one of the organizers from that first showcase. Would you mind if we made your performance an annual tradition at the charity event? Your story, it's helped so many people." Eli leaned on his mop handle, considering. The old fear flickered briefly, but it no longer had power over him. "I'd be honored," he replied. "Maybe Lily would like to join again." During his lunch break, Eli sat in the empty music room. Sarah had given him Rebecca's old guitar, and he'd started bringing it to work. His calloused fingers, used to gripping brooms and mops, now strummed gentle chords. The music teacher, Mrs. Chen, often let him practice here, saying the room needed more soul. The afternoon sun painted warm squares on the linoleum floor as Eli finished his rounds. Students rushed past, heading home. But their hurry didn't feel dismissive anymore. Several waved, one even humming the tune he'd been singing earlier. At home, Lily waited on their small porch, her backpack beside her, a notebook clutched to her chest. Her eyes sparkled with excitement when she saw him. "Daddy, I wrote something today." Eli's heart swelled. Since the revival concert, Lily had thrown herself into music with passionate dedication. She'd started taking guitar lessons from Sarah, who came by twice a week, bringing not just music but healing to their family with each visit. They went inside their modest home, which felt warmer now, filled with pictures Sarah had shared of Rebecca's younger years. Eli made them both hot chocolatier, special treat for special moments, while Lily bounced impatiently in her chair. "Can I show you now?" she asked, her small fingers drumming on the notebook. Eli retrieved Rebecca's guitar from its case, handling it with reverence. The wood gleamed in the kitchen light, its scratches and wear marks telling stories of love and music shared long ago. He sat down across from Lily, positioning the instrument carefully. "Ready when you are, sweetheart," he said softly. Lily opened her notebook, revealing pages covered in her careful handwriting. She'd drawn little hearts and music notes in the margins. Taking a deep breath, she looked up at her father with eyes so much like her mother's. "I wrote it about Mommy," she explained, her voice quiet but steady. "And about us." Eli strummed a gentle chord, his heart both aching and soaring at the same time. This was Rebecca's legacy, not just the song that had brought them through the storm, but this precious girl who carried her mother's spirit so beautifully. Lily straightened her shoulders, just as she'd done on stage at the revival. She held her notebook carefully, though Eli could tell she already knew the words by heart. The late summer breeze carried the scent of cotton candy and grilled corn across Madison Park's annual Harvest Festival. Paper lanterns swayed between the oak trees, their soft glow mixing with the golden light of the setting sun. Wooden benches, arranged in a half circle near the small stage, held familiar faces, neighbors, teachers, and friends who had become like family over the past year. Eli Turner stood at the edge of the makeshift stage, his old guitar hanging comfortably from his shoulders. The instrument, once gathering dust in their attic, now bore the loving scratches and marks of daily use. Beside him, Lily adjusted her small microphone stand, her navy blue dress matching the deepening evening sky. At 10 years old, she carried herself with a quiet grace that reminded him so much of Rebecca. Sarah sat in the front row, camera forgotten in her lap, simply present in the moment. She caught Eli's eye and gave an encouraging nod. A year ago, such a casual performance would have seemed impossible. Now it felt like coming home. "Ready, sweetheart?" Eli asked softly. Lily's eyes sparkled. "Ready, Daddy." The crowd settled as Eli's fingers found the familiar opening chords. The song started as it always did, with the gentle melody that Rebecca had loved so much. But this time, something was different. This wasn't just Rebecca's song anymore, it had grown into something more. Lily's clear voice joined his, adding a sweetness that made several people in the audience dab at their eyes. They weren't singing for record deals or national audiences. They were singing for Mrs. Peterson, who brought them soup when Lily had the flu, for Mr. Garcia, who helped fix their leaky roof last winter, for Coach Williams, who gave Lily free guitar lessons every Thursday. The harmonies floated across the festival grounds, drawing people from their wandering. Children stopped their games to listen, cotton candy forgotten in their hands. Elderly couples held each other closer, swaying gently to the rhythm. As they reached the chorus, Eli noticed something beautiful happening in the crowd. Without prompting, people began reaching for each other's hands. Mrs. Thompson, who lived alone since her husband passed, found herself surrounded by supporting arms. The teenagers, who usually kept to themselves, set down their phones, caught in the spell of the moment. Lily's voice grew stronger with each verse, no longer the uncertain whisper it had been at the revival concert. She had made the song her own, adding little flourishes that would have made her mother proud. When she hit the high notes, Eli's heart swelled with a joy so pure it brought tears to his eyes. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of pink and purple, as if nature itself was providing the perfect backdrop. Paper lanterns swayed in time with the music, casting dancing shadows across upturned faces. In that moment, there was no divide between performer and audience, just a community bound together by love and memory. Sarah wiped tears from her cheeks, remembering her sister's smile. A year of healing had changed her too. She'd learned that keeping Rebecca's memory alive meant embracing the love she'd left behind, not guarding it like a secret. As the final chorus approached, Eli looked at his daughter. Her eyes were closed, lost in the music, just like Rebecca used to do. But there was no pain in the similarity, now only gratitude for this precious gift they shared. The last notes faded into the evening air, leaving behind a moment of perfect silence. Then came the soft sound of applause, not the thunderous kind from big venues, but the intimate appreciation of friends and neighbors. Eli set his guitar down and drew Lily close. Looking into her eyes, which held both Rebecca's spirit and her own unique light, he whispered, "The song didn't end with her, sweetheart. It lives on in us." The crowd clapped softly, hearts full. In the gentle fade of twilight, under trees strung with twinkling lights, a father and daughter had reminded everyone that love's melody never truly ends, just finds new voices to carry it forward. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you thought this was just the beginning, you're right. Click through and see where the story takes you next. If you enjoyed the story of Eli Turner, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.